Before I dive into components and how our whole application works, I want to briefly guide you through this project structure and the files which were created here. I do have a more verbose video about this, a video where I go into more detail in the module about the Angular CLI in later stages of this course. But of course you may jump ahead and have a look at this video right now if you're interested in what all of this does in detail. Generally, what we do have here is this E2E folder, which is used for end-to-end testing, something we won't use here. Then we got this source folder. Now this is the most important folder we have, because here we're going to write our code. Specifically, we're using the app folder here to store all our TypeScript files, all our Angular 2 related files. We create our components there and so on. So this will be the folder where we work like all the time in this course. Now in the app folder we got the shared folder where we would store some shared components and so on, and you will see this in action throughout this course. And then we got our app component here basically. Specifically, we got also this app component spec file, which would be used for unit testing, which I won't cover here, so I'll get rid of it. And then we only got the template of this app component and the styling stored in the CSS file. The app module thing here is something I'll come back to in the next module. Basically, for now, you can think of it as a bundle telling Angular 2, well, which parts our application has. And again, I will come back to this in the next module. And the index.ts file, well, this is basically a file keeping track of all the other files in this folder to make importing them from other folders easier. So kind of a management file. Typically, we don't need to work with that. The environments file simply stores some environment configurations which are needed for the compilation of our app and so on. And the defaults here should be fine, so typically we don't need to change anything here. The same is true for almost all these files here. These are files used by the CLI to build our project and to build it correctly. I want to highlight two files though. The main.ts file is the file which really starts our Angular 2 application, and I will also come back to this file in the next module. The styles.css file is a file where you could define some global CSS styling which applies to your whole application, whereas styles defined in component CSS styles would only apply to that specific component. Now, and the other files outside of the source folder here, well, these are really just config file of the CLI. So the Angular CLI JSON file allows you to change some default settings of the CLI. Most nodes here should be pretty clear. So for example, where you want to store your source code or where you want to output the compiled code. And the other files here, Karma and Protractor config, are used for testing. And I won't cover this here. Now there are two other folders which are hidden by my ID here or not created at all times. The node modules folder holds all the dependencies of this project, and you never ever change something directly in that folder. It's managed by the CLI. And the dist folder is also a folder where you never change something. This is the folder where the CLI will put all your compiled code, so the finished project which you could deploy to a server, for example. So with these basics set, you should now have a general idea of how this folder structure works and that we mostly work in this source app file or folder here. With that, let's move on and learn more about TypeScript before then diving into components and how the application actually starts and how that all works together in the next module.